Welcome back, James.
Cheers.
You've been living your best life.
Well, I have, yeah. Following the Tartan Army around Boston, leaving for Miami tonight for round 3 for more.
Well, thanks for gracing us with your presence.
Well, I like to pop in now and again.
Yeah, you've been living the dream, haven't you?
Living the Scottish dream, Mark.
Yeah, because we were laughing here in the office because at the end of a long live on the TV channel, which you've been doing in some bar in Boston, our friend and colleague Barbara Serra, the presenter, the anchor, she asked you what the Tartan Army, what you think of the Tartan, why it's great for you, and you kind of lost yourself, didn't you? You went all misty-eyed.
Well, I did go misty-eyed. Yeah, I lost myself. I could hear the pipes in my head, and actually I could scream. I could hear a voice screaming, "Help!" You're doing TV lives, but listen, I actually found myself locked into an answer, not just about the Tartan Army,
just about how great Scotland is.
Well, yeah, but about Scotland, and actually you'll probably hear this at least twice a year from every Scottish person you come across. But I found myself talking about our inventions because, as you know, Mark, Scotland, we are the world's engineers. We invented...
Here he goes again, guys.
Everything. Steam engine, copper wire, amniocentesis, radar. Tar macadam, the telephone and the TV. And if you piss us off, we'll take it back off you.
It's Mark here.
And it's James here.
Keir Starmer is out. The British Prime Minister announced that he is resigning. But of course, we knew that if we were to believe Donald Trump, because he made the announcement a day earlier on Truth Social. Starmer, as we know, fell foul of the president in the end. What will the man who looks likely to replace him, Andy Burnham, how will he fare? Any better? We'll discuss.
It comes as Donald Trump spends the weekend rolling in the muds with his former best pal, Giorgia Meloni. We'll explain exactly what we mean by that. And also JD Vance. He's made a last-minute decision to go to Switzerland for talks with the Iranians.
And listeners, you'll be glad to know we are back on Reflecting Pool Watch because Trump's $14 million pool refurbishment hasn't gone to plan. We told you that already, but it's getting worse now. And in typical fashion, he is blaming someone else. So, James, I was in over the weekend, as listeners to our quick take will know, because Trump dragged us in here with his Truth Social post.
Yeah,
did you see the one about Starmer?
Well, I did. Essentially saying, don't let the door knock your backside on the way out. It was patronising, unhelpful, undermining, entirely in keeping with a relationship soured between Trump and Starmer. Donald Trump, we're led to believe he didn't communicate directly with Starmer over the weekend, but
he didn't.
He would have had that information confirmed clearly. And the typical approach, some would say classy approach, would be sit back, say nothing, and let a man's career die with dignity. Donald Trump couldn't help himself. Everything for this president is about winners and losers. This was him portraying himself as seeing off somebody who had become his adversary in politics. And he does that for image. He'll take anything to enhance his stature, Trump, not least to people who cross him in politics. And of course they do, increasingly, in America and abroad. And with that, he becomes increasingly vulnerable. So I've no doubt in part this was a message to, well, certainly to Starmer, to others, and among them, the person who will replace Starmer. What price? Andy Burnham, of course.
Yeah, it was typically undignified, wasn't it? I mean, there's no question. He had no idea what was going on in Starmer's mind. He had just read the papers. He'd been briefed. He'd been told by those in his team who watch Britain more closely than he does that clearly Keir Starmer was on the rocks and was probably going to resign. And he thought, well, I'll just go one step further, and so he did. It's indicative of where that relationship has gone over the past 6 months or so, because there was certainly a time, as David and I discussed a bit yesterday, there was certainly a time when Starmer was almost seen as the Trump whisperer, wasn't he? He was the guy, he was the bridge between Europe and America. He was the one who came over here, gave Trump that letter for the king, from the king, all of that. He became this kind of unlikely pal of Trump's. No one saw it, but everyone was really quite impressed. But then it went wrong, and I think that that post on social media kind of just is a reflection of that. And then Trump, he's just before we started recording, he was in the Oval Office and he effectively verbalized what he had said in writing yesterday.
Your thoughts, and who would you like to see as the next Prime Minister of the UK?
I was critical only from this because I think he's a lovely man, but I said you're really messing up energy. You have windmills all over the place. In the meantime, you have the North Sea oil, and they won't let anybody drill. It's one of the great fields in the world, and they haven't even found most. You know that the UK buys much of its energy. You know where? Norway. You know where they get their oil? The North Sea. The UK has a much better portion of the North Sea. They don't want to do it for environmental purposes, okay? And I told him he's a very nice man. I mean, sort of a friend of mine. I mean, he was not good to us with NATO, Pete, right? He said, we can't use the island to land. That was the first. For a couple of weeks, he said, well, but ultimately I gave it to you now. That was a bad move. That hurt him badly. But I mean, I wish him well, but he's got two problems: energy and immigration and crime.
But I would say that it is very much a leader-to-leader problem. I very often hear different, and I've heard this from British officials, but others as well, that underneath this fractious relationship that Trump has with Starmer, or he might have with Meloni, or he might have with Merz of Germany, underneath that, things are kind of working, that the mechanics of government and the bilateral relationships are still working sort of as they were before.
Yeah, but in terms of the public perception, I suppose what they see in Starmer in that Trump whisperer relationship ultimately is weakness. I mean, there was a point where we saw the invitation for the second state visit, the letter in the Oval Office, the sucking up, let's be honest. And I think people were prepared to cut Starmer some slack because this was a leader of the free world, and that was the way, that was in Britain's self-interest to get close to him and to work with Donald Trump. I think the longer Trump's been in power, and the more frankly many see us as getting into daft old goat territory, I think sucking up and aligning oneself with Trump's persona, with his politics, is actually a mistake. And I think it's probably, over the long term, fed into this perception that Starmer has been a weak Prime Minister. It's the challenge for Andy Burnham. What does he now do? Is Trump at a stage where he needs to be more robust? A, because he needs to be more robust for Britain's interests, but also for his own self-interest in terms of how he's perceived politically. It will be complicated, I think. I mean, this is a centre-left Labour politician whose politics do not align with Donald Trump. And Andy Burnham, in the recent past, you know, he's been warning about American-style politics being poisonous, talking about Trump bringing instability to the United States and to the rest of the world. So it will be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I want to talk about Burnham in a minute, because he's likely to be the successor, but we don't know that for sure. But just one other point I wanted to make on Trump and his pronouncement that Starmer was going to resign. You said it was patronising, unhelpful, undermining as well. It was undermining because it allowed the enemies of the UK and the US to exploit divisions within our democracy. And we saw that within an hour or two of Trump just sort of dismissing Starmer. He's going to resign. He's out. He's got problems with energy and immigration. None other than Kirill Dmitriev, who is a close advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin. He is, runs investment funds. He is the guy who is coming over here to the United States to talk to Witkoff and Kushner about solving the conflict in Ukraine. Well, just shortly after Trump announced that Starmer was out, Dmitriev posted on Twitter, he wrote, "We did this jointly by exposing Starmer's warmongering and consistently wrong policies on immigration, crime, energy and economy. He failed to protect Britain and was destroying Western civilization. Merz, the German Chancellor, is next unless he changes his policies." Those there are the words of Vladimir Putin's advisor.
Well, it's the presentation of a changed world order as presented by the Russians and subsequently not contradicted by anybody inside the White House, and in fact only given traction by everything we've heard out of the White House in the past 24 hours.
And those are the sorts of challenges that Andy Burnham, if he is to replace Keir Starmer or whoever it might be, those are the sorts of challenges they are going to have to face.
Yeah, whoever it is will very quickly have to deal with Donald Trump if he or she starts in September, they will have the UN General Assembly to manage almost immediately. So straight into action, straight into the premiership.
I did a quick look before we started recording to see what Burnham might have said in the past about Donald Trump, because everyone, there's always a tweet, isn't there? So someone's always said something awful about Trump in the past. I actually, in my short look, and correct me via email if I'm wrong, but I couldn't find anything that he'd said about Trump. So there you go. But it is interesting to see, what his geopolitics is, and he is very much a man who has focused on the domestic agenda for much of his career. He's never held any senior roles in foreign policy in Parliament. He first elected in 2001. And so his first big moment as a parliamentarian, as a backbencher 2 years later, in terms of geopolitics, well, that was the Iraq War in 2003. He voted for the war. And interestingly, he voted against an inquiry years later into the legality into that war. I guess no great surprise that he voted for it, because he was close to Tony Blair, who was Prime Minister at the time. But today's Andy Burnham regrets that. He said recently, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have voted for it. The rage, rhetoric and haste of that war. Well, I tell you what, there's plenty of rage, rhetoric and haste swirling around geopolitics right now. So if he gets the job, he will have huge challenges well beyond the UK.
Huge challenges because, as difficult clearly as that issue was for Andy Burnham and others at the time, politics was a simpler game.
It really was.
Western politics was conducted in a straight line with, accepted norms and ways of behaviour and ways of doing politics. And
it was more binary as well.
It was more binary, ways of welding old alliances, keeping them together against the traditional perceived threats. That has been thrown up in the air. And Andy Burnham, for all his domestic political experience, should he be the next Prime Minister, will enter a political landscape that looks altogether more different, altogether more challenging.
In the context of Trump, I think one of the things that whoever takes over from Starmer is going to want to do is talk to those who know Trump better than he does or she does, and find out how he ticks, how to deal with him. And I imagine top of his list maybe should be Giorgia Meloni, because she was once genuinely the Trump whisperer, very close politically with Trump, and what a massive fallout they've had now.
Yeah, although I'm not sure I would follow Meloni's example necessarily, because she's rather burned down the house. I mean, did you see
But you said earlier that's what you think, the sycophancy doesn't work. She's gone too far.
Well, for me, yeah, you don't want to burn bridges, but that is very much the way it looks between Italy and the United States right now. I mean, I think the challenge for Burnham is to negotiate a path that is robust, that is pragmatic, that is confrontational when necessary, but without necessarily going too far. I mean,
isn't that what Starmer did though? And even then, I mean, Starmer had sort of trodden this very careful path where he was a little bit sycophantic, but then he said no to the air bases, and he stuck his ground on things like energy and infrastructure and immigration. And Trump just walked all over him anyway.
Starmer could have been far more robust in his dealings with Donald Trump.
In the early days?
Just in terms of, in the short and long term, this is a special relationship that has lasted for decades. He should have had Trump down as somebody who couldn't be trusted to sustain that strength of relationship. And as we sit here in Washington, D.C., I think there's a perception here that Starmer was very much the weaker partner in that Trump relationship. As we assess Donald Trump more than a year into his presidency, he is seen to be, erratic, unpredictable, a president who cannot be trusted on a day-to-day basis, never mind sustaining a special relationship for which he has no interest. The signs should have been there very early on for the Brits. And for Starmer, I think it would have shown greater political nous to be more tough, to be more robust with Donald Trump, wherever that would have taken him.
I disagree.
And it could scarcely have taken him to a worse place, actually, than he is right now. To be standing down as Prime Minister and to be humiliated by his old special political partner on the way out.
Yeah, no, I agree and disagree. I disagree with I think Starmer played it actually very well. I mean, Starmer was standing on the streets of Downing Street today resigning, not because he'd messed it all up internationally. He hadn't. And I think, he is actually pretty well respected internationally. He's there for domestic reasons. But I do think that he played it very well in the early days. There was a little bit of uncomfortable sycophancy around it, but look what it got us. It got us a trade deal that was the envy, a trade agreement. It was really a deal.
What's that worth, the trade deal?
Well, we're in a better place than Europe is. We're in a better place still than a lot of other countries are. So it has got Britain results. And then, I would argue he then, at the point at which he saw this crazy war in Iran coming down the road, he stood his ground. He said, "Do you know what, Mr. President? We're not going to do this. We're not going to allow you to use your the air bases in the UK." And that really pissed Trump off. But he stuck to his guns. So I think actually, what's the middle ground? Like, it's a question, isn't it? Who has played the middle ground and is currently playing it well? You've got Starmer at one side, but too sycophantic maybe, and then messed it up at the end by sticking to his guns on Iran. And then you've got Meloni at the other side, who is just gone all out. And as you say, burning every bridge as she goes. I don't know. I mean, is there a leader who is managing? Maybe it's Emmanuel Macron. Maybe he's the guy who has managed to sit on the fence in a clever way.
I think the person who plays it cleverly is the person who is left standing with stature and with power at the end of the Trump presidency. And I think the difficulty for Starmer and for the UK is that when Trump leaves the White House, the special relationship is worth far less than it was when Trump took power. We only have to look at what we've just been talking about, the Russians and the United States, on social media, essentially presenting this joint agreement. That's the way that Kirill Dmitriev would frame this. Yeah. And, I'm not sure that we can argue against that. We're still waiting for the White House to argue against that. So, the whole geopolitics of the United States, allies and adversaries, has changed. Britain could and should have been a louder voice in that. Quite how Starmer would have done it, that's an issue for Starmer. That was the challenge facing him. As we look back on his time now and his relationship with Trump, I think Britain is diminished. It's certainly diminished in the eyes of the Trump administration and, by association, the political establishment at large here. I think the script for Starmer wasn't the sycophantic script that we heard early on. I think the script that should have been deployed from the word go was what we heard actually from King Charles when he came here and rebuked Donald Trump for the way that he conducted politics.
Thing is,
had he done that,
but no politician,
he would have been in a stronger position, certainly this side of the Atlantic.
I completely agree with that, but no politician could ever get away with that because only King Charles would be able to head away from Washington unscathed after saying what he said.
Yeah, had he said that, had Starmer taken that line, he would be standing taller in the UK today and in the US.
He would have maybe stood taller, but I think he'd have been absolutely screwed, wouldn't he? I mean, the Trump would have just done all sorts of crazy stuff, like whacking on sanctions and tariffs and pulling out troops from the UK. I mean, he'd have done mad things just to spite Starmer. So that's the challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. What I'm saying is that I think Starmer, history will judge, won't it? But I think Starmer played it quite cleverly in terms of how he dealt with this hugely unpredictable American president. He played it carefully. He got it wrong sometimes, too sycophantic, sometimes yes. But I don't think there's any right way. Is there? Maybe. We could carry on talking all day.
We could, yeah. Well, who knows the secret of Donald Trump? Who knows what he's going to say tomorrow? But you're right. I think history will judge it, Mark. And I think, on the wrong side of history will be the people who were the suck-ups, who were
I agree
sycophantic. The Mark Ruttas who called Donald Trump daddy. I mean, goodness me, that seems a long time ago now.
Funny you should mention him. He is in Washington, arriving over the course of the day ahead. He's the NATO Secretary General, of course. Big meeting with Trump on Wednesday. And that's a really good point. Like, Mark Rutte has been unbelievably sycophantic. And again, probably playing it quite cleverly, but also thinking, I'm not beholden to voters. Voters don't make me NATO Secretary General, so I can play this sycophant role and make sure that we keep America at the heart of NATO by playing this role. That's what I hope will happen, I think, is his line. But yeah, I don't know how he does it.
Perhaps by sticking to the old principle, you don't stand up to bullies by bending over.
Anyway, after all that, we forgot to tell you what Meloni and Trump actually did, didn't we?
Remind me, Mark.
Well, so Trump claimed, this was at the G7, Trump claimed that Meloni had begged for a photograph together. He was basically saying she's struggling domestically in a political sense. So she wants to be seen with me. And she then got straight on X on Friday with a video basically calling him out and saying, neither I nor Italy beg, she said. I mean, it was full-on stuff. She said, President Trump, no dear Mr. President, I think, just President Trump. And this was a public post. She wrote, these constant, unprovoked attacks are senseless. As for my popularity, you being your friend certainly has not helped, nor does it depend on my relationship with you. My popularity depends on my ability to defend Italy's national interest, and that is exactly what I have done. This is also about what I did regarding the American military bases in Italy. Their use is governed by agreements that we have always respected, and that cannot be violated as long as I am Prime Minister. Italy remains a sovereign nation. In any case, my popularity is none of your concern. I suggest you focus on yours.
Yeah, well, the social media spats raged on. Trump doubled down. Subsequently, Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, he's cancelled a trip to the States this weekend, citing Donald Trump's remarks, calling them serious and offensive.
And that escalated very fast.
It did. No spat like a far-right spat. Eh?
We want to talk about the reflecting pool, but we must just mention Iran because if you blinked, you'd have missed it. But J.D. Vance, the vice president, flew all the way to Switzerland, didn't he? To have talks with the Iranians. The Pakistanis and the Qataris were there as well. There was some excruciating video which emerged, which showed that the Iranians had kept the Americans waiting. And then because Trump, who was sitting back here in Washington, had posted something along the lines of he was going to blow Iran to smithereens if they didn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which the military was saying was already open. It was all very confusing. Anyway, the Iranians refused to have a meeting and a handshake or a photo op with the Americans, which must have been embarrassing. And there was this strange video where we could see what was happening and different corners, different people. J.D. Vance in one corner, Kushner with him, and then the Iranians in another corner. Absolutely fascinating.
He looked disrespected, didn't he?
He looked very disrespected.
And it was all over social media. And, for those who don't follow the news closely, who don't read the detail, and there are plenty of them, nobody would have missed that air of humiliation for Vance, a man, of course, who wants to be the next president. That will not have helped him. I mean, this is complicated enough. And, this man who has actually been trying to negotiate a path for peace, thrown into the role of American hardman going over to sort it out.
There was also there were two other images struck me, and we're talking about the images because there wasn't much in terms of words that came out of this weekend. But there was one shot of the Pakistani Prime Minister, just a bit of video taken at the moment when he discovered the Iranians were apparently going to walk out, and his face is like thunder. He's thinking, oh my God, how am I going to keep all this together? Because you have to wonder what's in this for Pakistan. They have been front and center of this attempt to bring Iran and America back from the brink. So there must be something going on there. What's Trump promised the Pakistanis in return? And then the other thing was a still photo that came out, which showed the Qatari Prime Minister and J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has got a computer in front of him. The Qatari Prime Minister is next to him. It looks like he's telling him what to do on the computer. And then behind is Jared Kushner looking a bit worried. And obviously social media has picked this photo apart. So you can see that there's an ID card in the side of the computer, which is not J.D. Vance's ID card. So that's got people wondering if he hasn't got his own login. There's lots of memes, things saying, have you tried AI to solve Iran and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, and I think tells us that the Iranians are the masters of the optics in a situation like this. Everything about the visuals made GD Vance, look disconnected, look out of control, and it made the Iranians look what they think they are, empowered, emboldened, and the victors in all of this, dictating the next move, the winners in a game of chess.
On that, being emboldened, we've had a question from Mark in London who's asking about the memorandum of understanding that they went to Switzerland to discuss, and specifically about the $300 billion that he read would be funded. This is money that is apparently going to Iran. It's part of the memorandum of understanding, money pledged. And Mark has read that it's coming from Gulf states. And he says, which states? Is it really coming from the ones which Iran has been targeting over the past few months? I'm confused about this, he writes, and many other things. Yeah, you and me both, Mark. It is confusing. But what we can tell you is that $300 billion, it's not public money, and it's not really a reconstruction fund. It's an investment fund that is built into this memorandum of understanding. And the idea is that anyone who wants to invest in Iran over the course of the next few months and years is able to through this fund. So it's a private investment vehicle. It's being described as. It's not for reconstruction. It's not for reparations. And it won't be public or government money. It's private money that anyone can invest. And yes, Gulf Arab states are being encouraged to. So too is America. But President Trump, as ever, James, has confused things by saying it is not an investment fund. We're not investing. We're not putting up 10 cents, so said the US president. But in fact, private American companies, if they want to invest in Iran, if they think there is good return on that, then they are able to.
Now, Mark, last time I was in here with you, you were a fan of the changes to the reflecting pool. And look at it now.
Yeah, fair cop. Yes, but I have since admitted with David that it didn't take long to look pretty bad. And it's gone from bad to worse. An unmitigated disaster, I think, a massive waste of money so far. So the paint, the blue paint, the American flag blue paint has started peeling off. The algae is back, and even as they vacuum it away, more is coming behind it. The National Park Service was seen pouring hydrogen peroxide into the pool at one point, but all that did was help to peel off the paint. A duck was also seen dead. It's been a disaster.
That's not funny, by the way. But something else that's not funny is the detention of a cyclist who's been arrested amidst the Trump administration saying that it's vandalism that has caused all of this. So this guy's in custody. Somebody filmed him apparently trying to grab the hose, they say, that was being used by the national parks people. His story is that, well, maybe my bike touched it. So that's all going to play out in court. But
this is a guy who was on his cycle ride at the weekend and went down, like so many others. I went down there as well on Sunday to have a look. And I, and lots of other people could see floating in the reflecting pool.
Yeah. Careful, Mark. You might have to turn yourself in.
Yeah,
present yourself at a police station.
Yeah, well, exactly. I did not touch the flaking paint.
Yeah, that's your story. Tell it to the judge. But you know what? This is a microcosm of the Trump we know and of how he operates. He ignored normal rule.
Yeah.
He ignored the normal rule, subverted any kind of public consultation, and no bid contract was given to one of his supporters. $1.7 million worth to a guy who was involved in a bribery scandal. Now it's all gone algae. It has to be somebody else's fault. And the fall guy is this cyclist who's up on this misdemeanor charge. It's a president who ticks off the wish list, getting what he wants without thinking through the fine detail. It's happened here, and of course, we see it happening elsewhere.
It's a hot mess, isn't it? The president is blaming unknown people for pouring chemicals into the pond when there is literally video footage of his own park staff pouring hydrogen peroxide in there. He is claiming that people are ripping off the lining of it. No evidence there's no video or evidence of anyone doing that. It's a mess.
Yeah, and all this, for what? I mean, this reflecting pool was doing its job, a water mirror to reflect the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial.
It's a reflection of Trump's presidency now, isn't it?
Now, that's all from us for today. I need to go and catch a flight to Miami in pursuit of the Tartan Army. A reminder that we have our first exclusive episode, only accessible to insider members, out already.
Yeah.
And we'll have our next one out this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I listened to your one, you and Martha, talking about Trump and sport.
You enjoy that?
Yeah, very good. Very good. And this coming weekend, we will have the second episode out. So make sure you become an insider. $2.99 a month, £2.99 or $29.99 a year if you sign up now, though. To celebrate the launch, you can get a third off your first year's subscription if you use the discount code. What is it, James?
Well, it is, Mark. Trump33. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be back on Thursday. Until then, questions and comments to the usual place, which is, Mark?
Trump100@sky.uk.
What a team.
There we go.
See you soon.
Go and catch your flight.